Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Lunar Observer, the unscheduled podcast about fans discussing Insomniac Games, the creators of Ratchet, Song of the Deep, and...
What was that third one?
I just did a stupid. I'm sorry.
What was
My
the
cat
third
jumped in
game? I can't remember it.
My cat jumped in my lap.
Oh.
It's Edge of Nowhere.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Alright, one more try. I'm so sorry.
Insomniac Games, the creators of Ratchet and those two other ones.
Ratchet and... Alright, third time's the charm. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Lunar Observer, the unscheduled podcast about fans discussing Insomniac Games, the creators of Ratchet, Song of the Deep, and...
Edge of Nowhere.
I know! I'm writing it down or else I'm going to have another laughing attack. I'm sorry. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Lunar Observer, the unscheduled podcast about fans discussing Insomniac Games, the creators of Ratchet, Edge of Nowhere, and Song of the Deep. I'm Division 10, and we're joined by Kebabs.
Hooray, we did that in only one take.
Ha. Okay, so before we get into the latter half of the news we were discussing in episode 12, maybe a brief moment about talking about what we've been playing in the past couple of days.
Yeah, I've just finished Pokemon Fire Red. I didn't catch them all, but I got the 3 legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, and I caught Suicune, and I caught Mewtwo. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's it. I'm moving on to the next one, which is Heart Gold.
I've got to tell you, I never played through all of Fire Red Leaf Green, but at the end, after you beat the Elite Four, experience becomes really hard to come by. So leveling up any Pokemon that you've missed becomes a chore.
Not really, because you return to the Sevi Islands. When you first visit them, you do so after beating the Cinnabar gym. And Bill comes along and says, oh hey, I was going to the Sevi Islands, why don't you come join me? But you can only visit Islands 1, 2, and 3. The other 4 are unlocked after you beat the Elite Four, and it's there that you can encounter wild level 50 Pokemon.
I mean, that helps, but
and
when
more
you...
trainers.
Don't you also have Gold, Silver, and Ruby, Sapphire Pokemon in the area? That increases your Pokemon Index, the Pokedex, by a lot.
Yeah, it's, well, I'm not entirely familiar, but from what I saw, it was only Gen 2 Pokemon.
Ah, okay. Gen 3...
Which explains why the later 4 islands only use Johto music remixes.
So now you're moving on to Heart Gold?
Yeah.
Still have my copy of Soul Silver. We're going to need to do some trading. I, meanwhile, put down Fire Emblem today to pick up Going Commando, aka the second Ratchet game. I am so close to unlocking the Insomniac Museum, so I wanted to actually unlock it.
Yeah, without having to exploit a clock teleport.
Yeah, exactly. I've never unlocked one in any of my games. The third game, you need all of the trophies, right?
Yeah.
It's different for each of them.
Yeah, we're talking about the in-game trophies, not the HD collection trophies, obviously.
Correct.
Up your arse
But
and
one
trophies before it was cool.
Some of the trophies are for things that I know I'm never going to be able to do. I'm trying to remember...
Annihilation Nation, I know, is one. The Rangers is one. Upgrading all the weapons is one, I think.
I have all 3 of those. I have most of the character trophies as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are basically not gold bolts.
Yeah, and it's just another collectible to find. But there's one of them that's just impossible, and I can't remember what it was or what the condition was for unlocking it. But I just remember that I could not do it no matter how hard I tried. The big one that I'm having trouble with in the second game is second game is you get it by getting all the weapons up to their final level.
Yeah, except for I believe the Clank Zapper.
Which I did anyway, so it's a non-issue for me.
Yeah.
The only ones I have left are the mega tank bot needs to level up.
Which is surprising because that's like your favorite weapon. You'd have thought that would be the first one.
It is. It's about halfway. Actually, the one that's going to be the hardest for me is the hover bomb launcher.
Yeah, that weapon's always been awkward because when you fire a mini rocket, for example, it takes a quarter of a second for it to hit an enemy. With the hover bomb gun, no, it's quite a bit longer. As powerful as it is.
Yeah, it's slow. It doesn't get a lot of XP per kill.
Yeah.
I might just do the impossible challenge again just to level it up some more. But
that has limited usefulness because those aren't even the most XP giving enemies in the game.
No, the HQ area gives you a lot of XP, and then Angela's homeworld. I can't remember the name. The icy planet. Grelbin, thank you. Those have pretty high XP.
Her quote-unquote homeworld.
Well, what she called her home planet.
Well, it's her planet of residence, I think.
Residence, yeah.
Yeah, a bit like how Eldon is Ratchet's planet of residence, but his homeworld is Fastoon.
Yeah, but does he even consider Fastoon his home world?
Not really, and that's the important
part.
That basically sums up the entire conundrum that he has in the PS3 games.
Yeah. No, and I feel Angela probably feels the same way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the third weapon that I have to level, and this one is probably like it's 99% of the way there. Is I just got the mini nuke launcher. So that one levels up pretty fast too. So I got it this morning, and it's already probably like 2 or 3 kills away from going to its final form.
Yeah, what I liked about the mega weapons in Going Commando is that when you pick up the normal weapons the first time around, their power is very much scaled towards the enemies that you happen to be facing in that particular area of the game. So the mini nuke is actually completely useless a couple of levels in because the enemies are already too powerful. But in challenge mode, they're all evened out, so the mini nuke is forever going to be the super damage dealing weapon.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I saw the pricing for the mega weapons, how the mini nuke and the hover bomb launcher was just obscenely expensive, even more so than the Rhino or the Zodiac. I was surprised. The mini nuke carried me most of the way through a non-challenge mode. I'd say about a third of the way through the game before I swapped over to the mini tube rocket.
Yeah, that is exactly why I call it Lancer syndrome and not mini nuke syndrome, because the Lancer deals a weak amount of damage, but the mini nuke launcher is powerful enough that it still can be useful several more levels further than the Lancer can be when it becomes useless.
It's really good for scattered ground enemies because it hits an area.
Yeah.
But I found the upgraded Lancer to actually still be useful in challenge mode, which was really nice. But let's get into the news, and our first piece actually isn't Ratchet related.
No, and as we've mentioned before, that's very good because we love Ratchet. We talk about Ratchet a lot, but we needed some variety now and again, and Insomniac isn't the House of Lombax.
No, although sometimes given my history with Insomniac on a personal level, it is 99% Lombax. I still need to play Sunset Overdrive at somebody else's place.
Yeah, I've been meaning to pick up an Xbox One with Sunset Overdrive, but I'm not going to buy an Xbox One for one game, and Sunset Overdrive is the one game that I'm interested in. So I've set myself up as sort of a series of guidelines as to when I'll make the jump on an Xbox One. The first is, Sunset Overdrive is obviously on Xbox One, and if it drops in price enough, that's one of the criteria. The second is if a sequel to Sunset Overdrive is announced. And the third is if that sequel is also Xbox One exclusive. Because then there will be two games I'll need to buy it for.
Yeah, because buying a console for one game is kind of useless unless it is just that game.
Yeah.
Danganronpa was almost that for me with the Vita,
hmm
and then it came out on Steam.
Yeah, it can also be that if, and I know none of the examples are actually console exclusives, but if you have a game that will last you a very long time, like Skyrim or Fallout or Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah, but even then, all three of the games you just described, a semi-decent computer will be able to play them. And
Yeah, that's what I mean. I kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of too many console games that fit that bill that are console exclusive, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say The Witness, but then that's on PC.
Yeah, and I've already beaten The Witness.
Yes.
I'm one trophy short of winning. My first platinum. Unfortunately, all the trophies are hidden, so I'm not sure what I need to do to get that last trophy. I've lit every lighthouse.
I can't remember what my first platinum is. It was probably... No, it wasn't a Kraken time. It was probably Burnout Paradise. Which was super frustrating because they patched that trophy support into Burnout Paradise, but they weren't able to do it in such a way that trophies would unlock for things you've already done. And this was like a year into the game being available. So if you wanted the trophies, you had to start from scratch.
Oh, so you couldn't say, like, I know in some games it's win X number of races, and if you have already won that number, but you were playing offline, you just have to win one more race for it to ding.
Yeah, and this isn't like Uncharted where you can just start from the top. Burnout Paradise is a massive open world racing game. So you had to do everything you had ever done again. And that was
terrible.
And that was the third time I did it, because before that, my PS3 crashed. It got the yellow light of death, and I had to start over again.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that says something about how much you like that game too.
Yeah. It also means that I'm very, very familiar with it. Anyway.
All right. So let's go into the news. So we covered news items 1 through 6 in episode 12. We've got a small stack left. So number 7 is from January 28th. That's from just before and during PAX South. Insomniac announced a brand new game that's coming out this summer called Song of the Deep.
And this was an interesting situation for me because on the 28th of January, I was still in the middle of crunch at Weta, so I wasn't able to cover this like I usually do. All the other news items are usually collated and curated by myself, but obviously I didn't have the time to do that for Song of the Deep, so I had to ask you, Sarah, to do it for me.
Well, better than that, I was the one who was dinging you, and because of our time differences, you kept on saying, "Oh no, what are you sending me? You keep sending me all of these things."
Yeah.
But you were in crunch, and I was actually in crunch. I was originally going to be going to PAX South that weekend, and then I actually had a work-related conference for my own company, so I couldn't go.
You were in crunch, I was in crunch, I was having Captain Crunch for breakfast.
Do they have Captain Crunch where you live?
No.
Oh, okay. I can bring a box with me.
No thanks. I don't have cereal for breakfast. It's luncheon sandwiches with barbecue sauce for me.
Man, when I lived in Japan, it was barbecued fish for breakfast. That was what our dorm had usually. That or toast.
Anyway, we keep finding ways to not actually do the news.
Well, Song of the Deep, going back to that whole bit about barbecued fish, Song of the Deep is a brand new game from Insomniac, and it is, as it sounds, about the ocean. It's steeped with Irish Celtic mythology.
Isn't it pronounced Celtic?
It's Celtic.
Yeah, Celtic. That's how it's pronounced.
Oh, well then I guess that's the way Americans pronounce it.
Keep going.
That is weird. Anyway, so it's about Irish mythology set underwater about a young girl named Marin who her father is a fisherman and she waits all night for him to return, and one night he doesn't come home. So instead of crying and waiting about it, she decides to do something about it. Takes an old submarine and goes down deep under the ocean to explore a Metroidvania-style 2D adventure.
Yeah,
Set.
the gameplay appears to be seems to be a hybrid. It's got Metroidvania progression, and yet it plays like a shmup.
Yes, I'm for anyone who's ever played or heard of Aquaria. I'm getting a much more refined Aquaria vibe from this, both in the style and the fact that it is a Metroidvania where you have complete free roam of the environment because you are underwater and therefore not bound by gravity, as you normally would be, as well as the way that Marin's submarine seems to move through the water.
Yeah.
In addition to her sub, Insomniac has stated that you'll eventually be able to earn abilities to venture outside of the submarine.
Yeah, that sounds
submarine
very similar to what was the game that got a sequel? It was a girl with like bright yellow hair, but she had like a blue streak down the side of her face. Was it Velocity 2X?
Whatever it is, that is unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, that's it. It's Velocity 2X, and the sequel to that game. It was originally a shmup, but then in the sequel, you could venture out as the pilot on foot.
In addition to that, what I find most interesting thing about Song of the Deep isn't the game itself, but how it's being brought out to the public. For the very first time, GameStop is acting as a publisher for this game, providing advertising, physical copies, and all of the things a publisher would traditionally do, except that they're a game retail store. So while Insomniac is making the game, all of the publishing parts of the equation are being handled not by a traditional publisher like, say, Sony, but by GameStop itself.
Yeah. A lot of people have... obviously, because this is the internet, a lot of people online have been saying, well, this is really dumb. GameStop getting into publishing. This is the end of days. But I don't really see it as that.
No, for two reasons. One, if you really despise GameStop on a personal level, and I don't, and I have plenty of stories as to why, which I can get into at another time. But if you really don't like GameStop for whatever reason, you can still buy a digital edition directly through the PS4 store. It'll be available on PS4 as well as on PC. I'm going to assume it's either through Insomniac directly or through Steam. They haven't mentioned yet. But digital copies on either platform will be available.
Yeah, it'll probably be Steam because that is how they release Slow Down Bull.
Oh, Down Bull, yes. But if you don't want a digital copy, if you want a physical disc copy, you can buy or pre-order one from GameStop. The game will be $15.
Yeah.
And it will be coming out this summer. I don't have the release date on me. Yeah, it's still listed as just summer 2016. So it will also be on. It will also be available on Xbox One.
Yeah, another one of Insomniac's multi-platform releases to go alongside Fuse. And have they had an no?
Other than Fuse, I haven't. Do they? I can't think of another multi-platform release by Insomniac.
That isn't a port.
Yeah, that isn't a port or just a cross Sony release.
Yeah.
No, there isn't one.
Okay, cool.
I just pulled down their games list. There isn't.
Okay. Well, one thing that I noticed with the GameStop partnership is unless you've been living under a rock made out of compact discs from the 90s, you've probably noticed that digital distribution is now going to be the future, and it pretty much is. Like, it's 60-70% of the way there.
Yeah, people who buy physical copies of games buy them for one of a shrinking number of reasons. There are still people who want to just own physical games, not as a collector, but because they'd like to be able to own and play them offline, even though things like the PlayStation Store and Steam allow you to play games offline that you've purchased.
Not Xbox Live, actually. A fair amount of Xbox games won't actually allow you to start them if Xbox Live is down.
That is true, but for the most part, most games that are available, Nintendo, Sony, PC,
I keep
Vita.
forgetting Nintendo does digital games.
Yes, it does. Vita or 3DS. All of those platforms, aside from Xbox One, you can play all of those games unless they are online only, like, say, Final Fantasy XIV. You can play them in offline mode.
Yeah. And of course, there's the whole resale thing as well.
There is resale, which is slowly shrinking because the people who continue to buy and want these games are the ones who are collecting them. The bigger issue is, say, soldiers overseas or without a good internet connection. Here in the United States, there are whole areas of central part of the United States, say states like Iowa, where internet connection can be very intermittent. If you're not living in a major city.
I was pretty much like that for up until like a couple of months ago. These unlimited internet connections, bandwidth allowances, isn't standard in New Zealand. Most people have caps, and as recently as 4 years ago, our internet cap was 40 gigabytes. And that is the size of an entire game nowadays.
Yes, there are very few games that are smaller than that.
Yeah, downloading a game can blow the entire internet that you might need for, say, email, or that you'd rather use for watching YouTube videos. I remember for the longest time, I never watched YouTube videos in HD because that would completely destroy the internet that we had. In addition to that, internet speeds as well. So if you have a digital game, it could take you several days to download it, and then you wouldn't be able to download another thing ever again until the next month.
Yeah, when I lived in Japan, we were actually the very first class in my university, and this was in 2010, to have wireless in the dormitory.
Yeah, the wireless connection in my house was also pretty crap. So not only was it slow and it capped, but it was also, as you said, intermittent.
So for people who, and it's becoming a smaller share of people in the world, but it is still a sizable enough share that it is concerning for people who have those internet connections or lack thereof. To be able to buy and play games.
Yeah. So in addition to all of those reasons, one of the things that I've noticed GameStop doing is that they are slowly introducing themselves into the collectible merchandise market, sort of selling figures and, collectible books and strategy guides and stuff like that on their store. So I think this is their way of sort of preparing for the digital-only future. They're dipping their toes into the collectibles market so that eventually physical games can join them in the collectible scene. Because I think people will still buy physical games to some degree, less as this is the format that I want, and more as a collectibles item. And I think Song of the Deep is one of their ways of venturing into that.
Yeah, considering that they're not, we don't know if they have control over the digital distribution or not, but it doesn't seem like that they do.
No, I mean, it might say so on the title screen, because GameStop, I think, does have sort of a budgetary contribution to the game.
Yes. But as far as that, it's not going through, say, a GameStop launcher. It's going through PlayStation or Steam. or Xbox Live is their store. So this is strictly for their physical game. Their physical, and I don't know if you know this, but in the United States, and then by extension worldwide, GameStop purchased ThinkGeek, which is why there's such a big push for collectibles and physical objects in their stores now, more so than just games.
Yeah, and I think focusing on collectibles is a really clever way of sort of making sure that they are still relevant in the future, because ultimately there will always be people who want to geek out and buy cool physical things or stuff that will ultimately in the future be digital.
Yeah, because even though the internet connection is probably the biggest single hindrance between people and moving to purely digital games nowadays, there are still people who want to buy and own those collector's editions. On my shelf,
Editions.
I have. I did say editions.
No, you said addictions. Which is also
collectors.
true.
This is true, but on my shelf I have Bravely Default's collector's edition with its beautiful art book and CD. I have Sam & Max's collector's edition from Telltale Games. I have Fire Emblem's collector's edition, which is also gorgeous. It's a thing that you have on your shelf. You have beautiful art books. If you've got a coffee table, you can spread them out. It's sort of like owning a piece of your own gaming history.
I don't have a coffee table. I don't even have coffee.
Well, coffee is delicious. But
so, what kind of items can we expect to be in the Song of the Deep? Song of the Deep Ultimate Special. You have to literally go underwater to find a collector's edition.
Well, as far as I know, there's no collector's edition out yet, but I pre-ordered my regular PS4 edition, $5 down, and then I'll be paying the other $10 when I pick it up. And it looks like it's just going to be the game and a disc, but I can display that on my wall with my other PS4 games.
Okay. Well then, I'll reword my question. What kind of cool collectibles has GameStop enabled Insomniac to make for Song of the Deep?
Nothing's been listed as of yet. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing's going to come out, but I could see...
I thought there was like a strategy guide or something, or like a novel.
There is a book that's coming out, but that's not GameStop. That's
okay,
Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
Sorry. When you worded that question, I was kind of confused. Yes, there's going to be a novel coming out with the game. The release date has not yet been released.
Okay. Is the novel going to depict the events of the game?
Nothing has been released other than the fact that a novel will be released alongside of it. So I really don't know.
Okay.
Like, I've got nothing else. I really don't know what else to say there.
I'll try and find questions that I know you can answer. Does the book have pages?
I hope so. I mean, maybe it melts underwater.
Does it have a cover? Is it flammable?
As far as collectibles or anything else associated with Song of the Deep, there's nothing been announced yet other than the novel. And as far as the novel is concerned, there isn't any information about it yet. So as soon as we know, we'll let you know.
So you're saying I can't get an actual Song of the Deep submarine?
No, but I wish there was one. Marin's submarine would be pretty awesome.
Yeah. You know Marin's Celtic because she's got ginger hair.
She's adorable. And, that was the other thing, is I really like the fact that they chose a more native, natural-sounding accent for her than just what, say, Americans think Irish accents sound like.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like we made her Celtic for diversity's sake. I mean, it must be pretty ridiculous to consider, Celtic and Irish and Scottish folk to be considered not white, because that's the skin color, but, it's... How many characters with ginger hair can you say are around in the games industry these days, for example? It doesn't feel like they
Mm,
shoehorned that in. They've designed the game specifically around the culture on which Marin is a part of.
yeah, like in one of the screenshots that they've released, there's an image of her in her submarine going through a cavern, and you can see a half buried, what looks to be a church
Mm.
underwater. In another shot, there is very ancient looking. Calling them Easter Island heads would be very misleading, but the traditional Irish druidic heads
Yeah.
that were found, the stone heads that you find at sites. I wish I knew what those things were actually called. So one of our listeners, if you guys know, we'd love to hear that from you. But they look very much like the traditional heads that I've seen in my art history courses.
Yeah, that is actually one of the concerns that I have about the game, the sort of environmental diversity, because most of the time, underwater, in terms of level environments, is usually designated for a couple of levels, but you don't spend that much time in there because it can get very samey exploring underwater levels, except when you go deep, in which case it's darker. With most other environments, like say a tropical island, you can mix things up by having, on the beach, in the jungle of that forest, on the cliffs, in the required by law volcano section. But underwater really has only, you know, two places that I can think of, maybe three, sort of up the top in the coral, another in the coral reefs, and another sort of deep underwater, and that's it. So it'll be interesting to see how Insomniac tackles that issue of making the environments feel different and unique from each other, and not beating people down in the head with, and we're still underwater.
Yeah. I mean, the way that they seem to be doing that is a mixture of natural natural architecture of underwater, say rock and coral reef, as well as sunken pottery houses and ships. It almost seems like we're going to be exploring bits of Irish Atlantis.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's part of the discovery that her father made. That he talked about this ancient civilization that he found, and Merrin goes down and says, "Oh crap, he was telling the truth."
Yeah, he was right. He was right all along.
Mm.
But that is an easy way to vary up the visual aspect. Is yes, you're underwater, but you're visiting entire cities and landscapes, and suddenly you can get into different architecture eras. If it was a city that lasted for many hundreds or even thousands of years, you could have layers built on top of each other, and then as you're exploring deeper, you're getting into the older and older layers of a city. That would be interesting exploration mechanic.
Yeah, those would all still fall under sort of the underwater city level trope of the game. One of the environment ideas that I came up with just now that they could probably use is sort of underwater thermal volcanic activity to introduce lots of reds, glowing reds, into the
Mm.
environment and the lighting and the color palette.
Yeah, no, I could see that. So you have maybe open ocean, maybe an underwater city or several underwater cities. You have thermal vents. You have a more tropical area. So maybe they got into. Obviously, that's not off the coast of Ireland, but maybe she ended up in some kind of weird bubble from this underwater city where they cultivated stuff underwater. And so you can get into a tropical area even though you're not in tropical water. One of the screenshots that they present is a bone graveyard, say a whalebone graveyard.
As opposed to an elephant graveyard.
Yeah, but it functions very similarly to, say, the elephant graveyard from The Lion King, visually speaking, at least.
Hmm.
A lot of grays and a little bit of pinks almost to offset it.
Yeah,
So
the
I
local.
encourage.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I encourage people to go on Insomniac's website and give it a look-see. It's a really, really beautiful art design, and it's not like anything I've seen of Insomniac before. So the closest thing I could say that this is to, aesthetically speaking, might be Outer Knots. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
Slow Down
very
Pull to
ethereal.
a much lesser extent.
Slow Down Bull was deliberately designed to look like a children's crayon drawing, though.
Well, sort of
It
an arts and crafts get together, sort of everything
Yeah,
cut out paper and glued macaroni.
but as far as maybe controls, this seems like it controls more like a very refined Slow Down Bull, because Slow Down Bull was top down, but it was also very flat. Whereas this, you're moving in all four directions, up, down, left, right, because you're underwater, so you have full free movement, very much like Slow Down Bull does.
Yeah, and the gameplay design brief for Slow Down Bull was specifically, how can we make a functioning game using the least amount of controls, which is why you can operate the entire game using just 2 mouse buttons. But obviously Song of the Deep will, utilize more than 2 mouse buttons to play.
Yeah, because you have, unlike Slow Down Bull, where the bull moves automatically, you have full free control, and you're going to be earning power-ups and abilities for both your ship, and it seems like yourself as well, as you play through the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about the specific Metroidvania approach, if they go whole hog and ask you to backtrack through entire level sections just to maybe figure out if you might actually be able to go through this one time, or no, I still haven't got the right gadget for this yet. Because that doesn't appeal to me very much at all.
Yeah, it really depends on how they set up their backtracking mechanic. I really don't have too much else to say on Song of the Deep. I like what I see so far. I love Metroidvanias, but I'm very, very bad at them, so I'm probably going to sit and play this with my roommate together.
Well, to me, Metroidvania as a genre, for me at least, most people think of a 2D action side-scroller where you basically have this massive open, well, quote-unquote, open world section. So, for example, Castlevania always has you exploring a castle, and you are able to access more areas of it as you defeat bosses and pick up new abilities to get through to new areas of that environment. But to me, Metroidvania is more sort of the spirit of the gameplay mechanic, where you pick up an item that allows you to access an area that you previously couldn't in order to access the story. So as an example, Ratchet and Clank 1 has a fairly solid example of that. In the second act, you have to go through a string of picking up gadgets in order to progress through particular levels. So, for example, picking up the O2 mask on Pokitaru so that you can then explore Orxon as Ratchet so they can visit Hoven. But before you do all that, you need to pick up the pilot's helmet from Gaspar. But before you need to do that, you need to pick up the grind boots from the BTS station. That sort of idea. So if it was more like that, then I'd be more inclined to play it because, well, I'm at the end of the day, I am going to play it, but I would find it more enjoyable because then there's less tedious backtracking, and you can have sort of segmented off levels, so it feels more like you are progressing somewhere through a linear story rather than having this entire castle and you're spending all day in this one location and I haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah, see, the other way that I could see backtracking and this isn't backtracking per se, is that you start in sort of a centralized world, and then you've got a ring that you can go around it, an outer ring. But as you earn abilities, you can move further and further away from the center. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So you have sort of like a hub world, the core of a wheel of the core, and then sort of certain level areas would be spokes coming off of that hub area.
Yeah, so you'd never be traveling very far once you picked up a new ability because you're moving in and out of a hub world into further and further down these spokes that interconnect as you pick up new abilities. I've seen some games pull this off very well.
Yeah. And I guess the final concern that I have for Song of the Deep, as much as I like it and am going to play it, is again that environmental diversity. You reminded me of it when you said that the game would be set in Celtic places. I'm guessing Scotland specifically. And when I think of Scotland underwater, it doesn't exactly strike me as terribly interesting when I first think of it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the examples that I gave, I was doing under the false assumption that it would be in a more tropical environment, because then you have more opportunities to mix up the environment diversity. But in Scotland, I'm not sure how much of that you can apply.
Ireland. It's set in Ireland.
Okay, Ireland, Scotland, they are very similar as far as
Similar.
I'm aware.
Yeah. I mean, they're very close. They're very bold. They're both cold, rocky, cliffside sort of landscapes. But we don't know how far she travels. She's in her submarine. She could be going pretty far.
Oh, she could travel through the center of the earth and pop out in the Bahamas.
That's what I'm saying, is if this gets really fanciful and she's got a hub world, maybe the hub world is the core of the Earth itself.
I hope she brought a pack of ice.
Just one pack.
You must go through the planet core.
But seriously though, just because it starts in Ireland doesn't mean it's bound to it.
Yeah, that's true. It could be that, say, she ventures into the city and the city moves.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see how they go with this, because there's a lot of different underwater environments that they could be in. If they're starting in say an Irish themed area, if they venture out much further than their starting point. So I'm crossing my fingers and waiting to see, and I think we've exhausted what we know so far, so why don't we move on to the rest of the news?
Yeah. The next one on the day after is specifically from IGN. Whilst visiting Insomniac in a coverage of Song of the Deep, IGN's Terry Schwartz, yeah, that's how you say that. Wow, there's only one vowel in her name. Her last name. That makes it tricky. Okay, IGN's Terry Schwartz talked with CEO and co-founder of Insomniac Ted Price about adapting Ratchet and Clank into a movie, and previous attempts at making films from their other properties. According to Ryan Schneider, the collaboration with Rainmaker and Blockade for Ratchet and Clank is the right partnership after many meetings with other production companies that failed to get off the ground. When asked about other Insomniac franchises, Ted mentioned Resistance rather quickly, and how that project went pretty far until other projects came around and priorities for, actors and directors changed to other movies.
Yeah, so they basically said that they had a Resistance movie that they had been planning long before Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
In this IGN article, which you guys can check out online. We are going to go into this a little bit more in depth, because this is available and free to the public. It's not behind a paywall like, say, the PlayStation magazine. So you guys can read along too if you'd like for more information. But I found that to be pretty interesting that Insomniac's been considering movies for a while. I always figured a Ratchet and Clank movie was a pretty good fit, just because the visuals are very clearly a CG. Like CG movie ready, that they
more so
could fit a movie.
More so the PS3 games. In my opinion,
Yeah.
The PS2 games look like PS2 games.
Yes.
In the most literal meaning of that term. There is no offense to any of the designers. The PS2 games felt a bit more generic, but you can immediately see with the with Tools of Destruction and onwards, there is a specific art direction going, and that feels very much like a CG movie. On the back of the box for Tools of Destruction, and this has been said of pretty much every Ratchet and Clank game since then, it says, "It feels like playing a Pixar movie."
And it does. The art direction is incredibly sound, very clear. Creature Box's work. I mean, Creature Box did the original PS2 games as well, but they really came into their own at the PS3 era.
Yeah, you can see that in the design evolution of the PS2 games, where Ratchet and Clank 1, enemies like the Blarg or the Amoeboids, they look like, I don't really know how to word this properly, but they feel, as I said, generic, and they feel like anyone else could have designed them and come up with the same look. But as you move further and further forwards to Deadlocked, you start seeing shades of that classic Creature Box art style, that sort of thin limbs, thin legs, thick feet look.
Yeah, and Ratchet slowly gets it himself too. Like, not that he looks generic even in the PS1 days, the PS2 days, but Ratchet and Clank have always been very visually distinct. But if you look at their silhouettes, and this is an Animation 101 exercise, look at their silhouettes in the PS2 era versus the PS3 and PS4 era. They become more and more stylized, more and more distinct as the games go on.
To the point where people were off-put by it in All for One.
I liked Ratchet in All for One. I thought it was very visually distinct. The big head, big ears, smaller body, big feet thing.
And the big ears have actually stuck around, because before All for One, sort of the bottom of Ratchet's ears was sort of just below his eyes, but since All for One, even through Into the Nexus and to the latest games, the bottom of his ears is now just below his mouth.
Yeah, it's almost to his neck, but not quite.
Yeah.
And it gives him a much more visually distinct look. It also smooths a lot of the rougher edges in his design as well, which he's supposed to look adorable. Like, that's kind of the point, is he is the epitome of TV tropes, cute but deadly stereotype.
Yeah. One of the things that I forgot to mention about Song of the Deep is that the music is being composed by Jonathan Wandag, and he did the music for All for One, Digit and Dash, and Bad Dinos.
I didn't realize he did the music for the mobile titles too.
Yeah, he didn't do the music for Fruit Fusion because that was actually done by Insomniac crew members. They had a competition for people to come up with their own music tracks, and I guess the best ones made their way into the game itself.
That's kind of cool, considering that Insomniac internally doesn't tend to do their own music.
No, they don't. The first music that was composed for them was, of course, David Bejo in his work on Disruptor, and then they had the guy from the Police for Spyro. What was his name? I forgot. Stuart Copeland.
Huh. I did not realize that they had that he was the one who did the Spyro music. Huh.
Yeah, he also actually did the music for the first non-Insomniac Spyro title, Enter the Dragon, which is why, terrible game, great music.
But
I was wondering, actually, while pondering to myself, what would be some of the reasons that Insomniac would have declined having their game adapted into a movie when they weren't, as we discussed in the last episode, laughed out of the offices?
For one, I think if someone came to them with let's do a live-action Ratchet and Clank, like all of those other live-action CGI mixes, if it was brought to them rather than the other way around, they would have walked away.
Yeah, that's not how you tackle a world like Ratchet. I mean, who would you cast as Captain Quark?
Who would you cast as anyone?
Yeah.
Like, even then, that's a lot of prosthetic work.
Yeah, that was probably in the sort of Lord of the Rings era where producers looked at creatures like Gollum and Dobby and said, we can do anyone in CG and live action and it'll work.
Yeah, no. See, Ratchet works in CG in a CG movie, not realistically. Can you imagine a realistic looking Ratchet? Like, unless they got it right, like really right, it's going to hit so hard in the Uncanny Valley.
Well, yeah, the thing is that you wouldn't without having to explicitly change his design into something else.
Yeah, I mean, Clank would be pretty easy to do because robots already. There's enough variants that people could see at basically an up-resed current Clank and be like, okay, we can work with this. But Ratchet, in order to bring him in, they'd have to basically give him a cat's face on a human-looking-ish body in order for it to be CG, realistic CG to match with the rest of the actors, and that would just be weird.
Yeah, a live action Ratchet would probably have been pitched by the producers as being like Star Wars, which itself is a space romp filmed in live action. The problem is that the world of Star Wars is explicitly meant to be live action, and you'll notice that all of the protagonists are human. Han
Or
Solo,
human-ish, yeah.
yeah, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, there's a very good reason why Chewbacca isn't actually one of the primary protagonists of the films. He is certainly very present and iconic, but all he does is sit there, growl, and fire a couple of lasers, and that's it. You don't get to know his character at all. He's not a primary character, he's a secondary character.
Yeah, same with the robots, C-3PO, R2-D2. They're important for sure, but they're not the story drivers.
Yeah.
Why else do you think someone would walk away?
Well,
Money's always an
Insomniac
issue.
specifically. The one
Yeah,
that I was
money.
thinking of, well, yes, money, of course. We're only going to give this a $50,000 budget. But one of the reasons that I was thinking of is one that this is speculation on my part. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the previous episode. I probably did, but I think it would have been the whole celebrity voice actor thing.
Yeah, we did talk about both of these in the last episode. Not in the detail that we're going into now. Both a theoretical live-action Ratchet and Clank, and again, I don't know how. Oh, by the way, it was IMDb where I read about that. How substantiated that is, nobody knows, and Insomniac hasn't disputed or agreed with said statement. So
The problem
it
with
could have been.
IMDb is that at the end of the day, it is ultimately a wiki, and
Yes, anyone can edit it.
yeah, any 13-year-old Ratchet and Clank guy, fan, gal, who wants to say something on the wiki to make an awesome rumor, or just because they want it to be true, can edit the article and stick that in.
This is true, but we can at least speculate. Like, if such a thing were pitched, what would have happened? It would have been catastrophic. Catastrophic. Ha.
Well, that doesn't even work because Ratchet isn't a cat.
No, he's not, but he's cat-like. And Angela did attempt a very terrible cat impression when she was found by the Bugs for Less. So
It worked briefly.
briefly, about 5 seconds.
That was one of the best jokes.
Meow. Oh, it's just a no. Wait.
But yeah, I'd imagine the whole voice actor thing would have been an issue because for Insomniac, because here you have 3 voice actors who in
4.
okay, 4. But remember at the time they probably would have thought about a Ratchet movie. I'm thinking before Tools of Destruction, maybe. I think. So, and before that, sorry, it was only after that when Nefarious returned in A Crack in Time that he became the iconic Ratchet villain. He was certainly extremely popular before then, but by reappearing again as a major villain in A Crack in Time, he became the iconic Ratchet villain. But here you have 3 voice actors in James Arnold Taylor, David Kaye, and Jim Ward, and Armin Shimmerman, who are incredibly good at their craft and know the characters inside and out and can, nail it on the second or third take. And yet the producers want to go, oh, yeah, that's cool, but they have no name to them as far as films go. Let's have Jack Black voice Ratchet or Quark.
Yeah, that. If I were Insomniac, I would have walked on that.
They probably
Because it's
did several times.
Yeah, for one, that would actually cost. Well, we know it would cost more money. It would cost more money to hire those actors, but it would also cost more money in the form of time because of takes and interpretation.
Yeah.
They might not even get the character that they wanted out of it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And that is very clear with the movie adaptation. The movie isn't somebody's else's alternate take on Ratchet and Clank, like, say, The Lord of the Rings is Peter Jackson's take on J.R.R. Tolkien's universe, and that shows. This is Ratchet and Clank, the movie. It's Ratchet and Clank as a movie. And that shows everywhere. From the fact that they're reusing weapons and terminology. In the novel, for example, when an element of the classic games, when an element from the games shows up in the novel, it is spelt and depicted 100% accurately. As far as the movie universe goes. You're not using a combustor like a magnet launcher, for example. It works as a pistol. So it is very authentic to the universe that we know. I don't know where I was going with that.
I can't really speak to it because I didn't and will not read the novel until the movie comes out. As much as I would like to, I do not want to walk into spoiler territory in these discussions.
Yeah. Okay, I think I remember where I was going. So, yeah, basically, that's part of why live action would have been rejected as well, because that is a different take on Ratchet and Clank rather than the movie.
Yeah, and would it be a good or bad movie? I mean, that's entirely up to the way that it was built, but it's not going to be a Ratchet and Clank movie. It's going to be one with some of the trappings, but not the actual heart of the original story.
No, it's not going to have the same feel. It might work entirely on its own, but it won't be the same.
It's like, here's a perfect example. Battleship, the movie, was based off of the board game, but barely.
Yeah.
Ever so barely.
It didn't even have a general say, "Those damn aliens sunk my battleship."
It was about aliens fighting the Navy, basically. Like, what? Why don't you just have an aliens fighting the Navy movie? They took the name The Battleship because they hoped that people would recognize the board game. And honestly, I think just having it as some kind of crazy, campy B-movie of aliens fighting the Navy would have actually worked for it more in its favor than calling it Battleship.
Yeah. It was weird how they made aliens do it, because as far as I'm aware, I've played Battleship several times, and as far as I'm aware, the red ships aren't aliens. They're other battleships. So why didn't they do the classic movie sort of, North Korea is invading and they've got super shroud technology now, and then you've replicated Battleship? Because
who would have actually been our enemies? Probably China. And who is funding a large part of this movie?
That's why I said North Korea.
Yes, but people wouldn't accept North Korea as an enemy. They don't have that kind of technology.
Okay, fine. Chad has suddenly got a navy.
The thing about using two real-world countries is that you're going to end up pissing off somebody. The reason why we're able to get away with it with, say, World War II movies is because it's considered historical. That's the problem with near-future war movies, is you're going to end up pissing off somebody, and it's probably going to be China. And considering they're both funding a lot of Hollywood movies now, such as, say, Iron Man 3, or a very large population of the a very large portion of the movie-going population, sales-wise and trends-wise, you have to appeal to them, or else you're going to be in deep trouble.
Yeah, I know.
I'm being Debbie Downer here, but
yes,
I don't know how...
I knew all that.
Yeah, but our audience might not have. Yeah. Our audience might not have, but that's the same thing with the Ratchet and Clank movie, is you run into this fear of, especially outside developers, Ratchet and Clank actually being an excellent example. in that they were funded partially by China and I think Russia. They were funded by outside investors in other countries. And on the one hand, that's great. That helps that movie enter those countries because China has a limit as to what are considered foreign films that they can show per year. So by it being partially funded by China, you hit a certain threshold and it's not considered a foreign film anymore. It's considered domestic. So it expands the audience pretty widely. But on the other hand, then you have to make sure you're appealing to them and what that entails. And that's hitting a fine line.
Yeah, let's arbitrarily set part of Transformers in China.
Yeah, well, that was the same thing in China, is that for Transformers, is that the Chinese were major investors in that movie.
So, shall we move on to the next item?
Yeah, let's move on. So, our next thing
is, this was on the 6th of February. Ratchet and Clank appeared in USA Today, which is quite weird, and not in a sort of upcoming game. Okay, let's move on. It actually had a fairly proper article.
Yeah, USA Today it's not the best newspaper, but it's a national newspaper that you can get pretty much anywhere in the United States, which is rare because most newspapers in the US are local, with the exception of a few very specific, say, financial papers or whatever. You can get USA Today wherever you go. You can't get the New York Times wherever you go.
Well, yeah, because that has New York in the title.
Yeah. So, the fact that it was in a national chain paper was very interesting.
Yeah. But the article was mostly information that us hardcore fans already knew about. But one interesting detail I did notice in the article was how Ratchet is described as thinking he's the last Lombax, which alludes to future events from the Tools of Destruction part of the Gameverse storyline.
Yeah, it does. And there were a couple of new screenshots that weren't revealed before then either, which have since circulated around the internet.
Yeah, we'll get to those in depth at some point.
Do we want to move on?
Well,
there's really not much more to say other than the fact that it was really cool that it got national coverage.
Yeah, one of the odd details that I noticed is that Brax is described as taking Ratchet under his wing as a little brother after joining the Rangers, but that's a detail that I haven't noticed being present in any released media thus far.
As far as the commercials and whatnot, no.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that happens in the movie, that would be pretty interesting because it doesn't look like he's set up that way, but it would be really cool to see that.
No, Brax is more set up to be sort of the mindless muscle of the team. You know, does anybody get the feeling we haven't shot anything by now?
Yeah, that was from the first trailer.
Yeah. And another interesting detail I found was that Bella Thorne didn't actually have to alter her voice to play the part of Cora, which is apparently
no, that's
a
just
rarity.
her voice.
Yeah, usually she has to pitch her voice up. Now the next item, on the same day, IGN released 2 musical TV spots, one focusing on the Sheepinator and Sheep Bleats, and the other on the words Ratchet and Clank being spoken over and over and over again. The 2 spots included a fair amount of new footage, and we'll cover in an in-depth video, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and they're actually on TV. Cartoon Network and a few other networks are running them. I'm not a big fan, but they're not. I'm not the audience, so.
I thought the Ratchet Clank one was pretty fun.
They're cute, but they don't really say anything substantial.
Well, no, that's not the point.
That's not the point. That's what I'm saying. Is I'm not the audience.
They're not trying to tell you what the story is about, I guess. It's just a
no. They're just trying to.
Thing.
Yeah, they're trying to get you interested.
It either A, gets you interested, or B, if you're already interested, you're like, haha, this is fun.
Yeah, so it reminds me a lot of the old Homestar Runner using sound bites to make a song.
Oh, you mean 1, 2, 1, 2,
1,
1,
2,
2, 1,
yeah.
2, ooh, ah, ricky dicky 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 dicky, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So using clips from already existing clips from the movie to turn it into a short 30-second piece of music. Interesting concept. I mean, could have been better execution. I liked
Yeah.
it more than the original trailer, though. I thought the original trailer was a little ham-fisted.
How do you mean?
With the Tharpod child and whatnot, and the really annoying announcer.
Oh, right. Yeah, I thought the announcer was okay. The problem was the editing, specifically, because his phrases were often interrupted by characters going on entire charades, and then the narrator gets back to what he was saying in the first place, but you've already got a disconnect and you can't remember what he was saying in the first place. That is more an editing issue.
Yeah, so it's again, Insomniac's not in charge of the trailers. They're not doing they are in charge of trailers, but for the game, not the movie.
Yeah.
I haven't been I haven't been really that impressed by the advertising so far in general. It's no Deadpool, but
Well,
it is
very unique, keep in mind.
That is true, but that's the thing that people are hot up heels of. But it's also no Zootopia. The big difference is budget. Ratchet and Clank is a smaller movie and a smaller budget, and people seem to forget that because of how pretty it does look.
In places.
The texturing is gorgeous. The fact that they're able to share assets with Insomniac really helped.
Except for Clank, of course.
Yeah, Clank is different, but they're still using those scenes in the game.
Oh yeah,
There's
I know,
cutscenes from the movie.
That's a cutscene, not sort of sharing the assets. To me, an example of sharing assets would be, for example, the design of Victor Von Ion, a brand new character. He looks exactly the same in both.
Yeah, or Ratchet himself.
I think with Ratchet there are a couple of differences. If you look at sort of Ratchet in his Ranger armor in the movie compared to Ratchet in his Ranger armor in the game, I think that there are some slight proportion and shape differences. Namely, I think Ratchet's head in the game is slightly smaller.
I would have to sit down and look at that again, but you might be right.
Yeah, but as you say, that's it's often something that's being forgotten. I mean, this isn't a Pixar movie. It's not a DreamWorks movie. It's not a Blue Sky movie.
It's not even a Blue Sky movie. Yeah,
well,
Ice Age.
Yeah, Blue Sky did Rio and Ice Age. And Ice Age got really popular, so they deserve to be up there, I think.
Yeah. They also did the Peanuts movie? Was that Blue Sky, or was that somebody else?
I can't remember. But yeah,
but either way, it's a much smaller movie.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it pains me to admit it, Ratchet and Clank is basically generico animated movie number 72.
Yeah, it's actually got a smaller budget than most anime.
Yeah, but they've managed to, they've managed that budget fairly effectively, again, by sharing assets and that sort of thing. Like, the reason why there are so many tools of destruction weapons showing up is because they've already been designed.
Yeah, you don't have to spend money designing them again. You may have to clean them up a little bit, but
you would have to entirely remodel them, but you would be doing so based on the models that were already made, and that speeds up the process quite a bit.
Yeah. So that helps a lot, but keeping in mind that the advertising is aimed at a much younger audience, because they already know the hardcore audience is interested. They don't have to pander to us.
Yeah.
As long as it is ultimately a kid/family movie, the game is a family game. The game, if you're a Ratchet and Clank fan, the game is probably going to be closer to what you're looking for than the movie. Not that the movie isn't what you're going to be looking for, but it's not aimed at us. It's not aimed at the 28, 30-year-old who grew up on Ratchet and Clank. We're certainly here, and there's plenty of nods to us.
Yeah,
From what I played at the levels of PSX and everything I've seen so far in their materials,
and
they're really stuffing.
having
Yeah,
read the novel, there are also plenty of references to us in the film slash novel depiction of the story as well.
yeah, that's there. Don't get me wrong, but it's not for us. We're auxiliary. They know that we would be interested in the product to begin with. They have to sell it to a new generation of Ratchet fans.
Yeah, and that is something that I've realized just now. I remembered something that I think it was Ted Price said for the OPSM article, which is that the Ratchet and Clank franchise is reaching the point where the kids of people who played the original game are now going to be playing Ratchet and Clank. So I think that is one of the audiences that the movie is trying to go for.
Yeah, parents who love Ratchet and Clank themselves, bringing their kids, bringing a new generation.
Yeah, I mean, the film would obviously have a very limited audience, but I think the film is very compatible for that audience in addition to just kids in general.
Yeah. So, would you like to move on to item number 11, which
Yep.
isn't Ratchet and Clank at all?
Yeah, item 11, Sunset Overdrive on IGN's top 25 Xbox One games. IGN updated their top 25 Xbox One games list, and Sunset Overdrive landed in 4th place.
Holy moly, who beat it?
Um, that would be in order. Spot number 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Spot number 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider. And spot number 1, Grand Theft Auto 5.
So all three that beat it are not Xbox exclusives.
No. So Sunset Overdrive is the highest rated Xbox One exclusive on IGN. Ha 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 ha.
So that's pretty cool. Good on Sunset Overdrive. Keep earning those accolades, and I really hope that one of the unannounced projects in Insomniac's pipeline is a sequel. If anything of Insomniac's deserves a sequel, it's Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah. Of the game, IGN said that Sunset Overdrive could have easily gone wrong at so many points. Instead, it lands on the right side of all of them, making for the most original, fun experience you can have on Xbox One. Its colorful art style is gorgeous. Its sense of humor is hilariously self-aware. Its traversal trumps almost every other open-world game. Its missions all feel fresh and varied even when they're really not. In short, Sunset Overdrive is pure fun, all bottled up as a caffeinated beverage that feels so good when you drink it. Now, I went through the liberty of actually going through the list and listing the games that it beat. Would you like to?
You want to give me the? Yeah, let's split that up into two categories if you can. You want to give me the exclusives and the generals, or you want to just give them to me, all of them?
I'm just going to give them to you all at once.
Shoot.
Because IGN's list is curated as you've just got an Xbox One, you don't have anything else. What games do you need to buy? So they don't take into consideration sort of multi-platforms, and especially in this day and age of PS4 and PC exclusives and Xbox One and PC exclusives, the name exclusive is slowly losing meaning in the first place. If you just went for Xbox One exclusives, this list would be cut in half and half again.
Yeah, especially considering that developing for Xbox One also means pretty easy crossover into Windows 10.
Yeah, or PS4 even, because the architecture of the consoles are similar. If a game is exclusive to a particular console, either that's some sort of long-lasting agreement like Ratchet and Clank, or it's a new agreement to help the game get made, like say Street Fighter V, The Witness, or Sunset Overdrive. Okay, anyway, the list is as follows: Rare Replay, Smite, Rock Band 4, Wolfenstein, Child of Light, Oxenfree, Titanfall, Evolve, Forza Motorsport 6, Halo 5 Guardians, Minecraft, Tales from the Borderlands, Diablo 3 Ultimate Evil Edition, Ori and the Blind Forest, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, Batman Arkham Knight, Forza Horizon 2, Halo the Master Chief Collection, Dragon Age Inquisition, Fallout 4, and The Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt.
which are all excellent games.
Yeah, in particular, The Witcher 3 won many websites' Best Game of 2015 awards, and Sunset Overdrive is considered better at IGN.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that I know about Sunset Overdrive, again, having not played the game, is The Witcher 3 is a very long title. Sunset Overdrive is not. It's not short. It's not set, like, Into the Nexus short, by any means, but it's a very tight experience from what I've heard of people who've played it.
Yeah, it knows exactly how long it can use its gameplay mechanics. I know that Colin Moriarty on Kinda Funny has criticized The Witcher 3 for being too long. It has too much content for the gameplay mechanics it provides. And as I said earlier, if you're looking to buy one game to get the most bang out of your buck, The Witcher 3 is certainly not a bad choice. But you're going to be in that universe for a very, very, very long time, and that can be a drag.
Yeah, it's very similar with games like Skyrim or Fallout 4. You get a lot of content, bang for your buck. Entertainment per hour is very cheap, but will it start getting samey for you? For a lot of people, yes. They'll play Skyrim and they may not actually even beat the main quest line.
Mm. Yeah, I've had that.
Which game?
Well, Pokemon actually, I've had.
That happened to me with Fire Red Leaf Green, incidentally enough. The original's no problem, but Fire Red Leaf Green, I can't remember what it was, but I just never beat it.
Yeah. Yeah, because the game is so long.
Also, it was a very bad time. It was a Game Boy Advance game. My Game Boy and Pocket / Game Boy Color, I had magnifying lenses. I didn't have a light or a magnifying lens for Game Boy Advance, so I had very few games for it.
Yeah. I had it with Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, actually.
Oh, you never beat Brotherhood?
No, because Brotherhood was the first Assassin's Creed to be set in one open world, in that case, Rome. But what happened was that it's also one of those games which gives you everything right off the bat after you've completed the tutorial sections. So what that means is that you can theoretically do all the side quests at once before doing the first non-tutorial mission. And how I play games is I complete all the side quests first before going on a mission, because then I have the best gear, I'm leveled up, that sort of thing. So I was just playing for days and days and days, and I didn't get to the bottom of this hole, and I just gave up and quit.
Huh.
So yeah.
And then you just never went back.
No, I mean, it was a cool game, but I just gave up on it. It was too much to do at once. That's why I like the idea of Jack and Daxter. 2 and 3 did this really well, and I think Mass Effect 3 did it pretty well as well, where after you complete a mission, you unlock 2 or 3 optional side missions, and if you take care of those, you often have enough experience and have leveled up enough and gotten the right equipment such that you can deal with the next mission more effectively than if you hadn't, without being overpowered. And I really like that system.
Yeah, that is a really good way to handle open world, but still keep it constrained. And then if you're not going to do those side quests right away, you'll still have them in the back burner if you're ready for them.
Yeah, A Crack in Time had this to a bigger extent, where you had main planet-side story missions that were more dramatic and dynamic, but then at the end, you got to chill out in the space sector with some space radio, and just do something much more casual and, comparatively less taxing and more relaxing. Less taxing,
yeah,
more relaxing.
Also a bit lonely.
Yeah.
In a very good way.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't in the hustle and bustle of Terragnos. You were just sort of, standing on an asteroid in a space sector looking at the Battleplex or, some moon.
Do we want to move on to our last item on the list?
We have 2 more.
We have 2 more. Okay, so what's
Item number 12 is
12.
on the 23rd of February, the junior novel and the movie reader came out.
Yes, which is what everybody on the Insomniac forums is chomping at
Not
the bit to
talking
talk about. Chomping at the bit to talk about, but actually not talking about.
Yeah, because this is a very unique thing for the forums at the moment. I'm not sure how it is on sites like Ratchet Galaxy, but on the Insomniac boards at least, because of the fact that the junior novel is an adaptation of the movie, and the game is also an adaptation of the movie based on the game, there is now basically a 100% spoiler ban that lasts pretty much up until a week or two after the game comes out. And
No, a week or two after
movie.
the film comes out. So
yeah,
mid-May.
you're right. Yeah, the game comes out first, then the movie. So, yeah. And because of the fact that the Insomniac forums represents the majority of our audience at the moment, we are not going to be talking about the content within the novel or the movie reader.
No, we will be talking about anything that, as has been mentioned, if it has been talked about on any public site, i.e., Twitter from say Kevin Monroe or someone similar, Instagram for the same thing, or any publicly available thing like USA Today's online reader, etc., IGN. If it's on there, we'll cover it. If it's not there, and it's not public, like, say, the movie reader or the game, we will not be talking about it. And, yes, that puts us in a very awkward position, because I know Kebabs is chomping at the bit to talk about that movie reader. And I would love to read it as well, but I'm holding back for that reason.
You mean the novel?
The novel, yes.
Yeah,
I have the movie reader as well, which I did actually flip through. I didn't read it. One of the advantages of being legally blind is I can actually open a book and not be able to read anything unless I'm actually actively forcing myself to focus on it. So I can look at the images and not actually read a thing at all.
Oh, nice.
So I was able to look at all of the images without spoiling myself beyond seeing a bunch of really cool images.
Yeah. There are two details of the junior novel that I liked, and this doesn't have anything to do with the actual content that the text describes, so there's no spoilers, but I like the fact that the junior novel actually uses Eurostyle as its font for the words. Because
Eurostyle?
Yeah, Eurostyle is the same font that Insomniac have been using for the game text when it's not like a title, like say the negotiator or options. If it's like a long description for a weapon, they use Eurostyle, and they've been using it since Tools of Destruction.
Oh, so like the weapons descriptions.
Yeah, exactly. The novel is written in the same font.
That's a nice little nod. They totally didn't have to do that.
No, they didn't.
The fact that they went out of their way to do so says something.
Yeah. I'm wondering though if it's also a coincidence, because Eurostyle is also one of the more common sci-fi fonts, a bit like Microgrammar, which Ratchet also uses.
This is true, but still, you don't see too many books in general using non-standard fonts.
Yeah, they generally stick to Helvetica or Times New Roman, don't they?
Yes. Maybe Arial, occasionally.
Yeah. And she's busy playing the part in The Little Mermaid anyway.
Ha.
Okay, the other detail that I liked is that at the top of the page for Chapter 1, there are 4 emblems for the main Boots on the Ground in the Field Rangers, which is Quark, Ratchet, Brax, and Cora. But what I noticed is that Ratchet's emblem is identical to the one emblazoned on the side of a ship that Captain Quark gives him on Metropolis.
Huh.
So I'm thinking the emblems for the other 3 guys are what they have on their ships.
So it's less a ranking and more just like a military call sign.
Yeah, sort of like an identification. This is my ship. Look, it has my face on it even.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the 2 details from the novel that I liked. That aren't spoilery or talking about the content.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
Do you want to ask me what I thought about the novel overall?
I would like to know if you can, if you can talk about it without any spoils at all. spoilers at all. I would love that.
Yeah, sort of like the mood, the feel, that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
let's talk about the tone a little bit.
Well, as I alluded to earlier, the novelization at least is very accurate when it needs to be. For example, in this, we know that there's a scene where Ratchet tries out a couple of weapons in front of the Rangers after he gets his armor in sort of like this testing facility, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was in the very first advertisement.
Yeah. Well, when Ratchet is trying out each of those two weapons, they are named 100% accurately and they perform 100% accurately to how you would expect them to.
Huh.
So the combustor is spelt correctly, fusion grenade is spelt correctly and capitalized in everything.
I mean, that I would expect, but the fact that they go down to the descriptions, as you say, is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, not description, but sort of the performances, their actions in the novel. So, you know, the fusion grenade doesn't throw exploding sheep, for example. It throws exploding bombs.
Oh no, spoilers!
Yeah. It is ultimately a junior novel, so that leads into my main but understandable disappointment, which is the fact that the novel doesn't really like to dwell on anything. It just sort of tells something
short.
as it happens, does the obligatory joke that is also in the movie, and then moves on. So, for example, when Ratchet and Clank arrive on Metropolis, we do not get a paragraph describing Metropolis and what life there is like. If you didn't see the movie or are familiar with Ratchet and Clank, you would never know that it's a city up in the clouds.
Yeah, because it doesn't have enough description.
Yeah, about the only description that is in the book is the description of the Blarg. And that basically said, they're like fish with sharp teeth, and that's it. Moving on.
Which you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not if you haven't seen anything from the movie, but there's no sort of description or dwelling or anything like that. I mean, I'm not asking for Tolkien levels of detail and lore here, but, you know. But what I also notice about the novelization is that it very much feels like a literal transcription of the events of the movie and the dialogue and actions and that sort of thing. There's no sense. I didn't get the sense that there was stuff that was added specifically for the novel, nor did I feel like it changed some lines. There were many, many times where I was reading the novel and I'm like, that is exactly how they said it in the trailer. Which is why it's so spoilery, I guess, because it is so accurate to the movie.
Yeah, and I can totally understand why they don't want to talk about it on the forums, because that's unfair to people. Many regions haven't gotten the book yet. Some regions simply won't get it, and you'd have to import it from the US or from another similar source. And that puts people at a disadvantage, whereas the movie and or the game are coming out in pretty much every territory I can think of.
Yeah.
If not one, then the other.
But overall, as far as junior novelizations go, I don't read that many, but it was pretty enjoyable. And because of the fact that it is a transcription of the movie, basically, it had a lot of good jokes in it. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the movie that we have not seen in any released footage yet, and it's good stuff.
That's good to know. Maybe I will take a crack at and read a chapter or two.
Well, you said you wanted to. You said you wanted to avoid it, and yeah, as I said, because it's a transcription of the movie, if you read it, you are basically spoiling for yourself the entirety of the movie.
That's true. But on the other hand, do you mind if I segue to something on the tangent?
Okay, what would that be?
Well, not that I want to spoil myself early, but I'd like to take a moment to plug something that's going to be happening mid-April.
Oh, shouldn't you do that at the end of the episode?
Sure, we can. I don't really want to talk too much more about the novel because I don't know. A, having not read it, I don't know what I can safely say, and B, spoilers.
Okay, well,
Was there anything else that you wanted to cover?
not particularly. I mean, we do have one
Oh, you
topic
do have one
left.
more topic.
Yeah, and
Correct.
this is more of a sort of I did a thing and let's talk about it subject.
Right, you played the Ratchet and Clank trilogy in 3D, didn't you?
Yes, I did, and not 3D graphics. I got a new TV recently, and it is able to display content in 3D. So I thought I would take a crack and play a lot of the games that do support 3D in 3D. So I have well, I happen to have all of them out because I was lazy enough to not put them away after I did this. The games that I have that support 3D are the Jak and Daxter trilogy, the Sly trilogy, All for One, Uncharted 3, Sonic Generations, Resistance 3, and of course the Ratchet and Clank trilogy. So I played through all of those. Well, not through to the end, just to see how each game handled 3D.
So do you want to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Yeah, let's just start off directly with the ugly. Sonic Generations. It is absolutely awful 3D. It doesn't handle it well at all, because the two images for each eye don't actually align properly.
Huh. That's terrible.
Yeah, so you only get 3D, but only sort of in the middle of the screen. Anything off to the sides, and it's a complete mishmash.
Oh my god.
Yeah. The best game in 3D is actually the Sly trilogy.
Really?
Yeah, because not only do the two images for the eyes line up, but it's the only game that I have that is able to display its content at the original frame rate, 60 frames per second. The other games, such as Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank, take a frame rate hit when you view them in 3D, because it has to display two rendered images at once rather than just the one.
Yeah, so they drop the frame rate. Now, the Sly trilogy is very well known as being cel shaded, and that's how it got around a lot of the issues of the quote unquote PS2 era imagery that you normally see.
Yeah, it went for a specific art direction. In particular with Sly 1, it embraced the fact that it had a low polygon count and made all of the objects look pointy and distorted. There was never a straight line at all in any of the environments. No perfect
and that
circles,
really helped.
no perfect squares or anything.
Yeah, that helped a lot as far as the imagery goes for keeping a consistent, very distinct image throughout the entirety of the trilogy.
Yeah, and they let up on it noticeably with Sly 2 and 3, as the engine was upgraded enough that they could put enough polygons in it, I guess.
But it is interesting to see and notice, and that probably helped keep the frame rate consistent even while you were playing it in 3D.
Yeah, the funny thing is that the original PS2 Sly 3 also supported 3D.
Huh.
But it's not
How?
the 3D that you're thinking of. It's the
Are we
anaglyphic red and green lenses 3D.
That's actually what I was thinking of, oddly enough.
So every copy of Sly 3 came with these 3D glasses, and you could play through certain sections of the game in 3D, and they were specifically designed to be appealing in 3D. But there were two caveats.
What were the two caveats?
The first, the frame rate was cut in half to 30 frames per second.
Okay, so yeah, that would take a major hit, but some games are still fine in 30 frames per second.
Yes, but also remember that this is anaglyphic 3D. So in addition to that, everything was black and white.
Yeah, because it was really red and green.
Yeah, so the footage was displayed effectively in black and white, so you had none of that Sly Cooper color goodness.
That is true, but Sly Cooper also had a bunch of flashback scenes, so I could see that working as far as flashbacks go.
But none of the 3D sections are flashbacks.
Flashbacks, okay. That makes it weird.
Yeah, I mean, I know Sly himself is black and white, but come on.
This is true.
So on to the main subject, which is Ratchet and Clank, specifically in 3D.
Yeah, so how did it play? First off, you had the trilogy, and then you also had All for One, correct?
Yeah, the trilogy is the better of the two options because it's not at the full frame rate. So if you're playing in 3D, I actually highly encourage you to turn on your TV's internal frame blending. This is used to induce a soap opera effect, as they call it, and they often put it on TVs in the showroom because most people who buy TVs think that means the TV is better because look, it's improving the movie. But it's not. And most of the time you want to switch that off because in most films they choose a frame rate very specifically, and shots can even be shot in a low frame rate to induce a specific mood that is then ruined if you have frame blending turned on. But in 3D, it's actually beneficial because the more frames you have, the more information your eyes have when you're playing the game in 3D, and the smoother it will be. So without the frame blending turned on, if I'm rotating the camera in a level, it looks really jarring and janky. And
It ships.
I can visibly tell with my eyes that it's a series of images being played in quick succession in 3D.
rather than the trick that we get from viewing animation, which is really that we're seeing a lot of images in quick succession, and our brain is sort of mushing them together to make a solid,
Video,
continuous
yeah,
movement. Yeah.
basically video footage. So you would have to turn the frame blending on because neither of the two games support that. Only Sly was able to play it natively in enough frame rates where I could tell that it wasn't a series of images. Obviously, the cinematic videos aren't in 3D because they're literally using the same videos from the PS2 disc, and they can't re-render them because those assets were lost ages ago.
Yeah, I mean, how long are you going to keep a game asset from forever? They had the final rendered images, but not the actual animation, whatever they made it in Maya or whatever else.
Yeah, and that was a surprisingly frequent and therefore annoying complaint about the HD collection, where people were like, well, why aren't the cutscenes in HD? And why aren't they in widescreen?
Because they physically don't have them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And you can actually tell because the cutscenes, like the in-engine cutscenes, they've been expanded by from 4:3 to widescreen for Ratchet and Clank 1, because for those who can't remember, Ratchet and Clank 1 wasn't in widescreen when it came out. And you can
No,
tell
it was in
because,
3.4.
yeah, and you can tell because, for example, let's take the scene where Ratchet is talking to the Corkbot on Metropolis, and you get to the second half where Clank is saying, "Excuse me, Captain, but we have more pressing issues." You can actually see on the side Ratchet's arm sort of bolts still like a statue, but it's sliding into the position that it will be when the camera cuts to Ratchet when he goes, "Clank." And that is because you wouldn't see that in 4:3. But because it's been expanded to widescreen, you can now see that sort of behind-the-scenes trickery going on.
Yeah, basically cutting corners is the wrong word, but efficiently using their animation time.
Yeah, exactly. To get a character into a pose that they will be in later.
Yeah.
There's another instance of this trickery going on in Going Commando, in the scene where Clank is walking up to the enlarging machine on Dobbo with the mathematician.
That's from Going Commando.
Yeah, because for Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal, they it's difficult to explain, but the widescreen in Ratchet and Clank 2 and 3 and Deadlocked was they put letterbox bars on the footage and then they effectively zoomed in on it. So when they did the widescreen treatment for HD, it was unletterboxed and then expanded out to the sides.
It's an interesting idea.
So now you had all this animation on the top and the bottom that you could also now see that you never weren't. So when Clank is walking up to the enlarging machine saying, "This technology looks familiar," then you can see that his legs aren't animated.
No, they're sort of just sliding along.
Yeah, because you only saw them from the waist up the first time around.
Yeah.
But those cutscenes are in 3D, and for the most part, Ratchet and Clank HD's 3D is pretty good, aside from the frame rate. It's really trippy flying the Groover. Sorry, not the Groovertron. They wanted to put it in that game, but they didn't because they couldn't. The Visibomb is really fun to fly around because you're effectively flying around this 3D environment in 3D. It's really cool.
And then All for One.
That is a very different story.
Travesty?
It's pretty bad. It's not as bad as Sonic Generations, but the images don't seem to mesh and display their 3D properly. Images can feel both very close and far away at the same time on the same object. You know, it's far away because it's a certain distance from your TV, of course, but the 3D picture is trying to display it as if it's, you know, right up in front of your face, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, because you're looking at that image from pretty far away. Like, that's the big thing about All for One is the fixed camera.
Yeah, and that would, in theory, be really good with 3D, and in fact, it works a lot better when you're in open spaces like the Nest Canyon or Aldaros Plains, that opening area after you first get out of the robot facility.
Yeah.
Sort of with the floating Avatar-style islands. That is an incredible level in 3D. But most of the locations in All for One don't have those vistas all the time. Instead, you're
they're very
looking
cramped.
at the ground from a fair distance away.
Yeah.
And in those situations, the 3D just doesn't work. But that's not the worst part.
What is the worst part? The cutscenes?
Yes, the cutscenes. Because the images for each eye aren't exactly the same as they're supposed to be. There's some distortion on the right eye footage.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. But you know how sometimes you're looking at an object and it is visible to one eye but not in another? So it sort of seems half there, like a ghost?
You're talking to the person who can only see out of one eye at a time, so...
Oh, crap. Well, I'm sure the audience knows what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure the audience can follow along with that one. Unfortunately, you're talking to the one well, not one, but one of the few people in the world that cannot see out of both eyes at the same time.
Yeah, you have that, where you see distortion in an image that is present on one eye, but not in another, and it is incredibly distracting.
That is weird.
Yeah. Now, the cutscene 3D is in fact better than the live in-engine 3D, but that distortion kills it. So yeah, that was my experience playing Ratchet and Clank in 3D.
Wow. Yeah, and then you said, were there any other games? You said Jak and Daxter as well.
Yeah, that suffered from the same issue. Nearly all the games I have suffer from the issue of not being able to display enough frames to make the 3D work 100%. They more sort of get 60, 75% there. The only exception was Sly, and that is because it can display its 3D in 60 frames per second.
Do you think it would do you think it's pretty much dead in the water at this point, but do you think that there's any merit to it?
Well, the problem with 3D is that there's too much needed to get it to work. It's a bit like trying to buy a peripheral for a console like the PlayStation Move or the 32X for the Sega Genesis. You pretty much have to buy into this whole other thing. And because it's a whole other thing, it doesn't get enough support. That's what everyone's scared of with PlayStation VR, that it won't have enough support to last very long. And so with 3D, I personally think it is pretty valuable as far as a viewing experience goes. I mean, it ruins films. You can't do Your eye doesn't focus on the places that the director wants you to when you're watching something in 3D. So it doesn't work very well there, but for a video game it works really, really well. The problem is that you need a 3D TV, which is hard now because 3D is dead, and you need to do the whole 3D glasses thing as well to get it to work.
Yeah, and you have to sit a certain distance and certain angle away from the TV as well.
Yeah, sort of. That's more of an issue with the 3DS than it is with viewing something in 3D, but it is certainly a factor you have to be mindful of, for sure. I mean, I was really excited when I learned that 3D was actually going to become a thing, because I thought that I would have to live to the age of like 70 in order to see that sort of technology come along. And now here it is, and I'm only 21. Well, at the time I was 21. I'm 25
yeah.
now.
I guess I'm in the minority in that it just simply can't affect me in any way.
Yeah, you literally cannot see in 3D.
Yeah. So it's frustrating because I can't put my hat in the ring.
Well, most people have dismissed it as a fad, and either you've dismissed it, or if you're not the 5% of people like me who really like 3D and think it is worthy of merit, you either have dismissed it as a fad, or dismissed it as a fad because it gave you headaches and you vomited once.
Yeah, which, I mean, I got headaches, but I can play a 3D game. I can put on an Oculus Rift, as I mentioned in our last episode, but I can't see in 3D. So what that allows me to do is just basically use my head as the camera, which is super cool. There's only so long I can keep it on me, though.
Yeah, you basically view VR in 2D.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's actually something that people often forget about VR. VR uses the same trick for 3D that 3D TVs do. It just happens to display both images to both your eyes at the same time, but it's still delivering a unique image to each eye, which is what 3D TVs do.
Yeah, and what's even cooler, the bigger advantage of VR is that it's an attempt at 3D, but the gimmick is further than that.
Yeah.
That your head is now the camera.
Yeah, exactly. The approach for VR is not just 3D. It is transporting you into a specific environment that is not where you currently are. That is the main thing of VR. But in order to do that, it has to use a similar 3D TV trick to convince you that you're in this 3D environment.
Yeah. Now, for me, the 3D trick doesn't work, but the immersive still does.
Yeah. Okay, so you know how I said there was only one item left?
What is the one? What I'm guessing that you lied, and there's still one more.
Yes, I lied.
What is item number 14?
Okay, this is going to be a bit of a coordination thing, but I'm currently sending you a file right now over Skype.
Oh my. This is okay, so I downloaded the thing.
Okay.
What is this thing?
Would you take a listen to it? I'm sure I'll insert this into the actual show at some point so that the audience can listen to it as well.
I can't really tell what it says.
Well, it's a Zony sound.
Praise something, yes.
They're saying praise Orvis.
Oh. I couldn't, it sounded like praise res.
No, it's praise Orvis. But here's the stinger. This file was found by a Ratchet and Clank fan in Tools of Destruction.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's an interesting note. I mean, it's very clearly set up that A Crack in Time is a direct sequel, and it's pulling a lot of stuff, and Tools of Destruction really is setting up A Crack in Time.
Yeah, in particular with things like the Court of Azimuth. Not a direct mention of Alistair Azimuth, and Azimuth is in fact an actual astrological term, but then it is used again in a Lombax context in the sequel, And we also have Flint Vorsalon and Nefarious. Quark finds his wallet at the Imperial Fight Festival and mentions it while you're fighting.
Yeah, he says, will a Dr. Nefarious please come and pick up your wallet? I can't remember the exact quote.
Yeah, I'm sure I can plug that one into the episode right about now.
Will a Dr. Nefarious please report to the concession stand? We recovered your wallet.
But yeah, that one was really funny as well. I initially dismissed it, though, I remember, until he actually showed up at the end of Quest for Booty, and then I put it in the timeline.
Yeah, but in general, it really feels like, I'm sure they did a lot of editing between then and when A Crack in Time came out, but they had at least an idea of where they wanted to take that.
Yeah, that the Zoni had this higher up person at the very least named Orvis.
Yes.
Yeah, so I found that very interesting. Obviously, it doesn't actually execute in the game as far as the person who discovered it can tell, and I've explicitly not mentioned their name just in case bad things happen as a result. But still. Yeah, I find it very similar to the other audio clip from A Crack in Time that mentions Lorna Cross on Wikipedia. Have you heard that one?
Yes, that's Lorna Cross is supposed to be Angela's mother.
Yeah, or at least by virtue of the fact that they share the same last name, it is heavily implied that that is her mother. Who went to Wikipedia University at the same time, and Caden went to see the female individual who would eventually become Ratchet's mother, and I have to say this because she doesn't actually have a first name. And they happen to see each other at the same time. It's obviously meant to be for when you're with Azimuth visiting Wikipedia, but I've tried several times to have that particular sound clip execute, and I never have, so it has effectively been cut from the game, but it's still on the disc.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So I thought I would include this at the very end as a fun Easter egg thing to end the show.
Yeah, that is really cool. I couldn't quite make out what they were saying, though. I mean, part of it is that they're all, I'm sure it's the one voice actor, and then they're multiplied, but they're multiplied slightly out of frame with each other.
Yeah. So, given the sound of that audio file, I think it's meant to be sort of played in a similar position to the "Yay" clip.
Yeah, that it would have been that instead, or you complete a task like completely, like maybe say at the end of fixing Iris, and they all say praise Orvis as they quote unquote die. That was one thing that always bugged me in Tools of Destruction, is that when they charge something up, they just disappear.
Yeah, well, given that the Zoni are actually made of pure energy, which isn't physically possible, but this is Ratchet and Clank, and talking toasters aren't physically possible either yet. You can sort of infer that because the Zoni are powering something up, they are sort of transferring their energetic form to power that object, which then leads to an even more frightening scenario because they're not dead. They're just stuck powering this device forever and ever until someone switches it off, and then they die.
Yeah, or they can release themselves from it. I always figured that they were pure energy, but now there are Zoni powering Iris.
Well, I've always suspected that Iris is a Zoni object anyway. Sort of like built by Zoni. I mean, we know in A Crack in Time that the Terracnoids helped. But I always felt that the Zoni built Iris because if you look at the architecture, it feels very Zoni-like with all of the cyan blue lines around it.
Yeah, it is very sort of sci-fi glowy in the very specific way that the Zoni are.
Yeah, and I know that this wasn't an intentional design decision at the time, but the gold aspects of things like the raritanium core of Iris is visually it's similar to the Great Clock as well.
It is. But I'm going to say, in that case, they may not have done that on purpose in Tools, but they may have used that already existing imagery from Tools to shape how they were making the Great Clock.
Yeah,
Would not
exactly.
surprise me.
And Iris itself also has mysterious origins, as noted by the Polaris Compendium of Historical Importance. So, yeah, I highly suspect that the Zoni built Iris, particularly because it is able to just know everything, despite having
Or
no
Orvis
actual
did.
inputs. Well, Orvis and the Zoni to me are effectively the same thing when you say the Zoni. And also another thing that's a piece of evidence for this is the fact that the Great Clock and Iris shared the same Veritanium vector core. It
That
stated
is
that in
true.
Galactic Trivia. But I'm sure the audience has things to say as well. They are more than welcome to do so on the Lunar Observer threads located somewhere on the Ratchet and Clank forums. I'm sure you'll be able to find out where that is.
Or on our Tumblr.
Oh yes, we do in fact have a Tumblr, and we keep forgetting to plug it. And the
Yes.
YouTube channel.
We have, well, our YouTube channel is pretty sparse. It's only for when we do
Video specific content. We're not really going to release these podcasts in video because that doesn't really make much sense for us because we're not in the same room.
No, but if you want to check out our Tumblr, where we have all of our all links to all of our episodes, video and audio, and occasionally some additional news, it is Lunar Observer, all one word, lunarobserver.tumblr.com.
Yeah, and by all the episodes, we literally mean all the episodes. We're talking about the JMW and Unzipped Zebra run, as well as the run before that with Xantor and Sweet Tea Holic, and
Yep.
the third guy whose name I embarrassingly can't remember anymore because it's been so long.
And then episodes 8 on, which have been Kebabs and myself.
Yeah.
Man, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We've done 6 episodes together so far.
That's more than any other run. Hooray, we're now the definitive version. Take that, other 2 versions.
But before we go, I know I mentioned this briefly earlier.
Yeah,
and
you
I
have
also,
another thing that you want to plug at the pluggy section at the end of the show.
Yeah, if you guys don't mind humoring me for a moment. So, first off, I'm going to take this moment to actually plug 2 things. One
Okay, now you've crossed the line.
I know, I've crossed the line, but they're for charity.
Oh.
So, the first thing I'm going to plug is actually not one of mine, but another Insomniac fan on the forums. Next weekend, we'll be playing Ratchet and Clank for charity.
Which one?
The Frost Miser is going to be playing from March 14th to the 21st. He's going to be hosting several charity streams where he's going to play each of the games.
Oh.
He's going to be raising money for Extra Life, who, by the way, I'm actually a volunteer for this charity organization as well, so I'm super stoked for this. So Extra Life is a charity organization that raised money for research at children's hospitals. I actually raise for the local hospital here in Philadelphia through streaming and other means. So the Frost Miser is going to be raising specifically for the Janeway. You can either raise for the charity as a whole or for a specific organization. And he or she is going to be raising for the Janeway because the hospital saved his or her life as a baby. And they've been doing Extra Life streams every year since 2013 to raise money for this specific foundation. So go check that out. It's going to be March 14th through the 21st. This is the Frost Miser, the word the, Frost, and then Miser. So a full week of streaming
miser?
Ratchet and Clank. M-I-Z-E-R.
Thank you.
All one word. Yep. So go check it out. If you can't pop him or her a couple of bucks, at least tell your friends. Go cheer them on as they try to speedrun through a bunch of Ratchet and Clank games for charity. So that's next week.
Do we know what games the Frost Miser will be playing?
Has not released the schedule yet, but it's going to be
Okay.
1 game per day for 7 days.
7 days. Okay.
Yep.
So I would imagine that would mean Ratchet 1 through 3, Deadlocked, and the Future Saga. If he wants to cut out,
Yes.
if he wants to play Into the Nexus, he could always cut out Deadlocked.
Deadlocked. Yeah. That's what I'm assuming. It's either going to be the original trilogy, future trilogy, and Into the Nexus, or original trilogy, Deadlocked, future trilogy.
To be fair, Into the Nexus is long enough for an afternoon, but not an entire day. So I would assume PS2 games, Future Saga.
Yeah. So, on that note, exactly 1 month later, on April 15th, my own streaming group here in Philadelphia is going to be doing a live stream April 15th, which is tax day here in the US, so take some of those rebates that you've just given and maybe pop a couple dollars our way. We're going to be starting to stream at 8 o'clock p.m. EST. That time may change slightly. We're still working out some of the kinks, but that's the tentative time. We're going to be streaming not the classic Ratchet and Clank games, but the newest one, which comes out on April 12th, which you should be buying if you haven't pre-ordered it already. If you're in the United States and you're an Amazon Prime member, you can actually pre-order Ratchet and Clank, the new game, for the whoppingly expensive price of $32. And that includes the Bouncer pre-order too. So, seriously, $32 for a brand new full Ratchet game? You can't go wrong with that.
It's also worth noting that the Bouncer is probably not going to be included as DLC on a later date, because Insomniac has never done that with any Ratchet game ever.
That is true. I know Best Buy also has a similar sort of pre-order incentive if you're part of their group, so check out what your options are, but I do know that if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can get it for $32, which is crazy for a day one release of a full PS4 game. But anyway, April 15th, just a couple days later, we're going to be doing not a speed run. And why not a speed run? Because we're going to be doing it in costume and in character.
Yeah, it's going to be a run.
It's going to be less of a speed run and more of an endurance test. So pop on by, maybe drop us a couple of bucks. We're not going to be doing it for Extra Life. We're actually going to be raising money for...
Did you mention the game itself?
We're doing the newest Ratchet and Clank game.
I thought you were doing All for One.
We are not doing All for One. We're doing the newest game.
Oh, okay. I was under the assumption it was All for One for some reason.
Originally we were going to be doing All for One, but the logistics just simply do not work. Streaming a PS3 game is a lot harder than streaming a PS4 title.
Yeah, the PS4 game has a stream button right on the controller.
Well, it's more so than that. We couldn't get a hold of a Quark. We've got Ratchet, Clank, and Nefarious, and keeping in mind that we're gonna need to take breaks to take water and get off the camera for a little bit, we're gonna be rotating who's actually playing, and that's a little bit safer for the performers. It's better for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's a trick that they do with endurance magicians all the time.
So instead of doing All for One, where all of us are going to be at the screen at the same time, we're going to be doing the newest Ratchet and Clank game. In addition, we're also going to have some interesting raffle prizes. Stuff like the original comics will be raffled. Handmade non-official art from people. The original Ratchet and Clank poster from 2002. Maybe even some copies of the game. We're gonna see. If you'd like to donate to us, we're going to be giving our money not to Extra Life, but to Child's Play, for the hospital in which I was diagnosed and treated in Newark, New Jersey. So our money is going to be shot off that way. So you can either just directly donate to them, donate through our stream. We will not be touching any money. It's all going to be handled directly through Extra Life, Child's Play. Or, if you'd like and can, donate a unique raffle prize for us to be giving away to the people who are watching the stream.
You should have one of the raffle prizes be both the old game and the new game.
That is if we can get a hold of it, because I would prefer, if we can, to get a wrapped version of both games, sealed in box,
Yeah,
which would be pretty
a wrapped
awesome.
version of a 2002 game, that is going to be near as makes a difference impossible.
I have a wrapped version of Ratchet & Clank 2002.
Were you too blind to open it?
No, I have 2 copies of the game.
Ah, okay.
It was the very first PS2 game I ever received. I know I mentioned this before, but I have a number of games that I've received or purchased because they were actually PT for me, physical therapy. My eye doctor,
not PT the game.
No, not PT the game, which is no longer in existence.
Oh my god, Ratchet & Clank, it's so scary!
Yeah, so this is just like the Frost Miser. Ratchet & Clank is near and dear to me because of using it as a form of eye-hand coordination training, spot training, and gaming in general is important to me. I know nowadays a lot of people who have visual impairments, who have certain types of visual impairments, are actually told to play video games to help improve their coordination. So this is our way of giving back to the community. We hope that you'll tune in. It's going to be on my Twitch channel, Division 10. Links will be available on both our Tumblr. Again, it's thelunarobserver.tumblr.com, as well as on the Insomniac forums as it comes closer, as well as on my own Twitter and Facebook pages. So we'll have a lot of fun in store for you. In addition, we'll have challenges that you can vote on the Twitch stream, like, say, maybe the cast has to talk exactly like the Japanese cast for an entire level, or we're all bilingual English-Japanese, so we can not only can we imitate the American voice actors as best we can, but we can all even imitate the Japanese speech patterns, which I find to be quite hilarious. In addition, maybe one of you guys will ask us for a wrench-only level, or maybe a bouncer-only level.
Wrench only, on Yeedle.
Oh god, no, that's physically impossible. That's a lot of comet strikes.
Yeah, and it isn't even the game where chucking the wrench is, fluid.
No, it's very, very chalky. On top of that, we'll have those raffle prizes we talked about. We'll not only be talking about the game in character, but we'll take some moments to talk about some of our personal stories about Ratchet & Clank in general, a retrospective, as well as maybe even some cosplay tips from those of us who have built Ratchet, Clank, and Nefarious. So we'll be able to even tell you, hey, I'm not selling this stuff, but I can tell you where and how to get these patterns so you can make your own if you'd like. So it'll be fun. It'll be a nice evening. We may finish the stream on Saturday morning. We may just do a couple of hours on Friday night, but we'd like to raise some money for a good cause and have a lot of fun while doing it.
Is it over now?
Yeah.
Hooray!
I think I went on a little bit too long, but I'm really excited about this, and so are our other performers. So
those doctors are either really awesome or really lazy. You have an ulcer? Oh, just go play video games. You're blind? Oh, just play some video games. Life-threatening condition? Oh, just play some games already.
There is actually a video game about unfolding proteins that is helping save people's lives, so you never know.
It's not Folding at Home, is it?
No.
Okay, that is a deep cut for PS3 owners. Do you remember Folding at Home?
No, I missed that. I got a PS3 last year, remember? I almost completely missed the PS3 generation.
Okay, Folding at Home was basically this app that was on the PS3, and in conjunction with the same thing being available for PC, basically it allowed your PS3 to perform folding.
Protein folding.
Yeah, protein folding simulations on your PS3 to help for medical research, and you could just leave that on while you're not using your PS3.
Yeah, basically using your device as a server farm.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was for. They discontinued it ages ago, but I like the music in it. It was very cool.
Well, on that note, you got anything else, or are we done with episode 13?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, in most other podcasts, this would be the bit where you say, "Where can we find you on Twitter?" And I'd be like, "I don't have a Twitter that I keep up to date."
I'm on Twitter as I am everywhere else as Division 10.
Okay, good there.
Yeah, so go bug me there. I have occasional Ratchet and Clank stuff, but it's mostly cosplay and a lot of stuff from PSX if you want to see some videos from there. We have, as we mentioned, we have our YouTube account, and our big one is our Tumblr, again, thelunarobserver.tumblr.com.
No, the.
It is the.
No, there's no the. Well, the name of the show has that in it, but not the Tumblr.
You're right. It is just lunarobserver.tumblr.com.
Haha! Kebabs 1, Division 10, 0.
I'm blind! I'm going to use that excuse even though I use text-to-speech.
Yeah, someone like Usain Bolt beats you at running and you go, "Well, you're mean because I'm blind and you're a jerk."
And then when I beat somebody at something, "Hey, you lost to a blind person. How do you feel now?"
No, take it one step further and say, "You lost to a blind girl."
Yeah, but blind's the insult enough. If
Yeah,
I want
but
to
I'm
rub
changing this
salt
like
in
a
the
90s
wound,
cartoon.
if I want to rub salt in the wound, then I add my gender into it. But on that note, yeah, check us out on Tumblr. If you want to ask us a question, just like Julian C did that we answered in episode 12, you can shoot us a question through either Tumblr or on the Insomniac forums, or you can send one on Twitter. There's tons of ways you can find us and keep in contact. Again, this is an unofficial blog, so we don't really have any insider info. If we're talking speculation...
This is very much a React podcast, and that's why we're appreciative that the Fine Brothers didn't trademark the React thing.
Well, they did. They did actually trademark it, but they rescinded that trademark.
That was a joke, Sarah. You don't have to.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You can cut that out.
No.
You want to say that again?
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
I said it's fine.
It's fine, brothers.
Okay, now we're ending the show.
Yeah, on that, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
All right. See you guys later. Wait, I'm Kebabs.
And I'm Division 10, and we're signing off.
Okay. Hooray! We remembered our names.